Greetings and salutations, y'all. In today's episode, I wanted to do a quick one talking all about edge work and how you can really take your projects, and especially if you're doing this as a business, you can take your products from a 5 to a 10 in terms of how they feel, how they look to someone who doesn't do leather work. Now, for this comparison here, I'm not only going to show you what it looks like with edge work and without edge work, but I'm also going to show you how to do the edge work. And yes, I don't know if I mentioned that before, but edge work is what we're going to be doing. You see, this is a cutout number 88. Okay, this is one without the edge work on there. This is one with the edge work on there. Which one looks more professional? Which one looks more complete? I can tell you for certain, it's the one with the edge work. And what's cool is if you were to sew this one without the edge work and this one with the edge work, and you were to set them side by side, you would be able to sell the one with the edge work for probably $10 to $15 more than the one without the edge work. And they're the exact same wallet. Exact same amount of leather. The only difference is that this one has an extra 10 or 15 minutes of work put into it for the edge work. Which, when you think about it, that's $1 a minute if you're selling it for $10 to $15 more. So you should always put edge work, is basically what I'm saying. And I'm about to show you how to do it and how I do it on all of my products, as many products as I can. I will add decorative lines and bevel and burnish. Let's get into it. Okay, so for the edge work that I do, you're going to need an edge beveler. This is a number 3 from Little King Supply. You're going to need a wooden or a plastic edge burnisher. This one is also from Little King Supply. And you're going to need an edge groover. This is a Berry King edge groover. I have links to all of these tools in the description. And then you're going to need some sort of whatever product you want to use to burnish the edges with. You could even use water and stuff like beeswax and whatever. I personally really like Tolkanol. Now, I also have a link for this. This is just basically sort of like a gum or something like that. You just take it with your finger and you apply it little dobs to the edges. And what that does is when you apply friction with the burnisher, you can get this really nice, glossy, smooth edge. And specifically friction, not pressure. So I'll go into that here in a little bit. All right, so I figured I'd give you a little bit of a more top-down view here. So I've got my edge groover. I've got it set to 1/8 of an inch. That's what I typically do for all of my projects, because that's also my seam allowance on most of the things that I'm hand sewing. I hand sew it at 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, and so everything just lines up really, really nicely. Okay. What you're going to do is you're going to just start at the edge here, and you're basically just going to draw it and make sure you are putting pressure on the head with the hole on it. You got to kind of, like, I don't really know how to explain this, but you're going to feel it when you're doing it. You're going to feel the edge guard against the leather, and you're going to feel the head cutting into the leather. And you just got to make sure those things are even and that you don't go too hard on either one, because otherwise you'll really fuck up your project. It takes some practice, so I definitely recommend doing this on a lot of scrap leather. Cut out long strips, long straight strips of scrap leather, and practice and practice and practice before you do this on your projects. Once you got it down, you're just going to draw it along here. So you see that's what that looks like. Okay? So for these corners, I don't try and turn the groove because I tend to get very inconsistent lines that way. So I just make a corner and take the line all the way off the edge of the wallet. Kind of like the way it looks anyways. So you'll see how that kind of makes that, I don't know. I like the way it looks. I started doing it purely because I couldn't get consistent corners, and then I kind of just was like, oh, this looks kind of cool. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Some edges are going to be tougher than others. And now we're at a corner where you can't really do that. So what I like to do is I just turn the piece I'm grooving at this corner until I'm parallel with the next corner. And because I've invested in a good quality groover, it makes that line really nicely as I'm turning the leather. So I don't actually turn this. Okay, so then we're just going to do the exact same thing all the way along here. Okay, turn it, draw it, draw it, draw it, turn it. Ooh, that could be turned into a song. There we go. Get that little, you should just be able to pick those off if you get any like that. Okay, that's it, really. That's all the grooving you have to do. Now, for the next stage, you've got your beveling. Okay? How do I explain this? Essentially what you're doing with the beveling is you're taking the corners off either side. And you see there's just this little, let me try and get this. Come on, camera. All right, camera's not going to work for me. That's fine. But you can kind of see, even though it's not in focus, you can see the way this is shaped. You're just going to kind of want to catch that corner in there. And you're going to want to do this with 4 to 5 ounce. Nothing thinner than 4 to 5 ounce. Otherwise, you're going to get horrible edges, and you're probably going to cut your fingers. So you're going to want to do this with a firm leather, 4 to 5 ounce or thicker. So you see that? Really, really, really simple. Where's the lines on here? Yeah. Really, really simple. I'm going to do that everywhere. Then we're going to flip this over and do it on the other side. And again, this is just something that you got to practice. I've been doing this for 6 years, so I know it's kind of becoming muscle memory. But that's the beauty of scrap leather, is you can just practice, and if you fuck something up, you can throw it away. It's fine, because you're getting it for so cheap. All right. Yeah, and I kind of wish I had another camera to look at how I'm basically like over and under this phone camera. It's kind of funny. Definitely doing a number on my lower back, though, so let's... Okay. There she blows. There she bevels. Here we go. Okay, so now we're back to where we started. Now we're going to flip this over, and I want to take a second to point something out. Do you see how tight this grain is? There's no loose fuzziness. Let me bring out another piece to show you the opposite. This would be the opposite. You would not bevel this leather because you're going to get a bunch of terrible, terrible edges, and the beveler is not going to cut through this nicely. So you would never bevel something like this. So if you're going to do the edge work, make sure that the leather you're buying is a nice, firm, tight grain like this. This leather is some 4 to 5 ounce black Chrome XL Cavalier from Horween Leather. Their grain is super consistent, which is why I like this leather so much. That's why I use it all the time. Okay, regardless, you're going to do the exact same thing on the flesh side, which is what the back side is called. And if you're working with a good quality leather and a good quality sharp tool, you're not going to have any issues beveling the backside. Here we go. Beveling its backside. There's some weird joke to be made there, but I'm not going to go there. For the sake of all your guys' sanity. Okay, here we go, boys and girls. Ladies and gentlemen. Okay, that's all the beveling you have to do. Boom, you're done. Boom, boom, you're done. Okay, now, here's the part where you use the tokenol. I'm going to change this camera angle real quick so that I don't have to destroy my lower back anymore, and I'll be able to show you this much more easily. Okay, so first step when you're burnishing, you take your tokenol. I've tried different ways of doing this, and thus far I haven't found a better way than just doing it with your finger. You will get, your finger will get a little, covered in this stuff over time. So if you're burnishing a lot, you might want to wash your hands every 3 or 4 times you do this. If you're like burnishing back to back to back to back to back, let's say you're making 50 wallets or something, because this stuff will start to burnish your fingertips. Okay, so you take a little bit on your finger here, right? I hope that's in the shot because I'm using a phone so I can't actually see. You're using the finger. That sounds weird. And you're just going to dip a little bit on there, if you can see that. All right? You're going to do a little more, little more. Guess you just want to get little, like, drops onto the edges here. Okay? Until you don't have any more on your finger. And in this, less is more. You can definitely put too much of this stuff on your edges and your project just becomes a mess because this tokenol will tend to leave a mark on the front side of your project if you're not careful. Now this leather is very, very waxy, so it's got a strong finish, but on other leathers it might stain your leather and leave spots, so you got to be careful with it. All right, so now I'm just spreading with my fingertip, and if any gets on the top here, I just kind of go ahead and wipe it away and redistribute it. But I'm just basically spreading it all over the edges here. I'm basically doing a burnish with my finger, but I'll go in with the actual burnisher in a second here. So I'm just getting everything off my finger and making sure I get it all on the actual edges of my project. Now, parts of this wallet, like this bottom part, won't ever actually be seen. So I technically could get away without burnishing it, but for me, that would bother me because why not just go the extra step? So that's what I do. I like to have my things very, very completed. And if there's an extra step that I can do, I'm going to do it, even if no one will see it. And honestly, I think that's what sets apart some leather workers from other leather workers, some leather workers from other leather workers in the craft business space, is who will go the extra mile for the product and for the customer. And if you can get that down and you always go the extra mile, you will have no problems being successful in this space. You just, it's just a commitment, and it's a choice to do the best that you can possibly do. Okay. Enough of Professor Nicola. Here's the fun part. All right? Take a burnisher. Obviously, I'm also just guessing that this is all in the frame. Take your burnisher, and you're going to find there's several different kind of notches or grooves in here. And obviously, each one is a different size depending on the thickness of the leather that you're actually doing. I just saw somebody riding an elliptical bike on the street, which is the first time I've ever said that sentence. So weird. Okay, so I usually use the second smallest, or I guess, yeah, the second smallest. So I don't know if I've ever used that first smallest. And what you're looking for, and notice I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it to kind of make it dog ear. I'm doing very light pressure, but I'm just making sure to get the friction. That's what I said before. Do not use a lot of pressure, otherwise you're gonna make your edges kind of bend up and down, and they're gonna be really messy. So don't use a lot of pressure, just make sure you get a lot of friction on there, okay? What you're looking for is that clicking noise. Now I'm gonna shut up here and hopefully you can hear it. All right, I can enhance that later, I guess, just in case you didn't hear it. But that means that that tokonol is working and that you're starting to get a good coating on there and a good finish and a good burnish. So that's what you're looking for on all your edges. It's much easier to get that clicking when you're just beveling one layer. When you get to larger, like kind of stacked projects where there's maybe 5 or 6 pieces of leather, it's a little harder to get that effect. Not a little harder, it just takes more burnishing to do and more tokonol. Okay, so we're just going to do this exact same thing. Light pressure, but lots and lots of repetitions. We're going to go over the entire project. And depending on the leather, some leathers will soak up the tokonol. So what I end up doing, and this is especially true on thicker projects, is I'll end up going on with water first. Then I'll end up dyeing the edges because I've got a little dye pen and I can show that method in a different video. I end up dyeing the edges. So water first, burnish. Then dye, burnish. Then tokonol, burnish. Another layer of tokonol, burnish. And then another layer of tokonol and burnish. That's what I mean by going the extra step. And I might touch up with a dye pen after all of that and then go in with another layer of tokonol, because the customer will notice, and you'll notice, and other leather workers will notice when you go the extra mile. Okay, so you see how nice these edges look? Can you hear that clicking? The fact that I'm getting clicking with my index finger means that this is good and burnished. Okay? And you see it's a small detail, but it takes it to the next level. And there you go.